Good morning, everybody, here and on Zooms. My first time here speaking, and I've got to say that this has been a wonderful congregation that we've come over to. We've felt welcomed and loved, and we hope to add to what this congregation has to offer. So I'm going to start. I've brought my own slideshow, so I'll give a little introduction. This is my family, and we are at Disney, and yes, I love Disney. So we've got from left to right, Kyla, my daughter-in-law, Missy, my wife. My daughters to my side, Ashley, and Justin and baby Norman. Norman is kind of a tear right now. He's almost 2 in a couple months. Next slide. I do like beach vacations, and that was Norman's first time on sand. He was not a fan. He did not like that at all, but it made for a great photo. Next slide. I like national parks. So this is Yosemite. And it's impossible, it's almost impossible not to take a good photo while you're there. But it's very peaceful and relaxing. Next slide. I have pictures of big trees also. The giant sequoia. This is in Yosemite. Next slide. And again, just to give you an idea of, the awesomeness that God has created this beauty around us, and the pictures cannot do that justice. Next slide. And then I do like participating in camp. So this is when my daughter was in her senior high camp a few years back. Next slide. And of course, I do like to go to spec. So I like being involved. So as I say that, I don't mind being involved with camps. Do not ask me to direct. Okay. Next slide. And I have officiated my son's wedding. I've done 1 funeral. I've baptized 2 youth and been involved in their confirmations. That's my story. That's my background, my history. Next slide. Oh. If you have any complaints, you take it to this guy. Next slide. So now we got to get seriously. So I believe in focusing on God's love for us and how Jesus walked earth to be with us and share this love. I like the idea that Scripture should be read with the interpretation of how does this show God's love for us? And this is not always easy to do in the Old Testament. Confession, I once mentioned to Vern Foster that no one should speak more than 10 to 15 minutes, because you get distracted. You're thinking about cutting the grass or, what are we having for lunch? So he called me out on it, but I had it coming to me. So I need to addend that statement. Some people, including Vern, are excellent storytellers, and I could listen to them forever. Unfortunately, I am not. I don't consider myself a good storyteller. I like to think that I will give you quality over quantity, but I really don't guarantee either of those. So this is the reading from today. Jesus talks about his death. When Judas was gone, Jesus said, "Now is the time for the Son of Man to receive his glory, and God will receive glory through him. If God receives glory through him, he will give glory to the Son through himself, and that will be very soon." Jesus said, "My children, I will be with you only a short time more. You will look for me, but I tell you now what I told my Jewish leaders. Where I am going, you cannot come." And this is the most important part considering today. "I give you a new command, love each other. You must love each other as I loved you. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Next slide, please. So this is a lyric from one of my favorite hymns. "They will know we are Christians by our love." And I forgot to tell, I missed getting that to Amy for one of the song selections, but she did have it in our interlude. So again, God speaks to us in many ways, and it was good to see that she picked up on that. So they will know we are Christians by our love. And this is the real reason I'm here, because I was raised Catholic. I attended church weekly. I was very content being part of the crowd. And then I got married, and my wife, introduced me to all this. And it took a while to get used to hobnobbing with people after church. And then after years of asking, I went to reunion at Temple Grove in 2004, and it was really because my son was being baptized, and I didn't want to miss that. And the reality was I loved it, and I said, why didn't I do this before? Why did I wait so long? There was something special about the place and the people there, and I've been back just about every year for at least a weekend. And then I was asked once if I could help with junior high camp for a week. And that turned out to be an amazing experience. You just feel something. You could feel how God was truly present in people's lives at those camps and on that church ground. And the line of the song was correct, and I sensed a lot of love. Then I was an unofficial member of the church for 12 years before being baptized in 2016. I was ordained 2 years later in 18, and I stand before you here today feeling honored and privileged to be here speaking to you. Next slide. This is from Mark 12:28. Which commandment is the first of all? And Jesus answered, the first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. And I do know that these set of Bible verses, we teach these to our kids when they're young, and that's wonderful. And this New Testament is from Mark, but this commandment is rooted in Jewish law. So if we look at our next slide, we look at Leviticus. This falls under the category of holiness and personal conduct, the law of love. You cannot be more direct than that. Although their difference in showing love back in the Old Testament was a little different, but it goes, as you can see, you shall not hate in your heart any of your kin. You shall provide your neighbor. You will reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's that line. I am the Lord. And reprove, it means you're allowed to go around correcting people. Because if someone's doing something wrong, it's your job to steer them kind of back towards God. You could take that with how you want to incorporate that, and I think that has changed over time, and we've gotten a little bit more gentle in our corrective actions between Old and New Testament and Jesus and everything that he embodies. And then the next verse is, the alien who resides with you shall be to you as a native born among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So God is literally laying down the law, writing it down in stone. How many times you get to use the word literally accurately? So he's telling you, I am the Lord your God. Kabish. If you're Italian, you'd get that. I heard that a lot growing up as a child. When I look back at the Bible is full of don'ts. And we think about what we learn as children. We learn about the 10 Commandments. Don't do this, don't lie, don't steal. Don't covet your neighbor's property. There's very few things that are do's, like honor your mother and father. But in reality, maybe what we should do is to learn to love first. Next slide. I don't know who these people are. They're not part of my family. Disclaimer. But who can look at this photo and tell me who's married versus single? Who's got a college career, or maybe as a construction worker, or maybe as a stay-at-home parent? Which one of these people likes Star Wars versus Star Trek? Who's gay, who is stray? Who's Christian, Jewish, Islamic, or maybe an atheist? Democrat or Republican? The answer is no, you can't tell by looking at a picture. And the answer is don't even try. Next slide, please. This is the other. It's much longer. It's from Acts 11, 1 through 18. I've chosen two very specific things to read from that. And this is, Peter is given a revelation that Christ's message was not just for the people of Jewish descent. The Spirit told me to go with them and not to make a distinction between them and us. And he sees the gift of the Holy Spirit given to this group of Gentiles. Again, it hits him hard. If then God gave them the same gift that he gave us when we believed in the Lord Jesus Christ, who was I that I could hinder God? So I ask, if Jesus were to come down through the clouds today, what would he say? Next slide. This is from the movie Elf. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend it. It's a nice Christmas warming story where he goes in and he sees a sign on the door that says, "World's best cup of coffee." And he goes and says, "Congratulations, you did it." Of course, it's just an ad. It's like, come into our store, get coffee. So would Jesus have this kind of attitude? And I'm thinking, well, maybe not. And I think Amy was very brave to put a name to a lot of the very specific things that are going on in our times right now that are causing us stress and separation, really. It's the opposite of what God calls us to be. I do remember, going back a few decades, the Berlin Wall fell down and the Soviet Union crumbled. And I thought to myself, ooh, we're set up for world peace. We don't have to worry about world war or nuclear annihilation. Then what happened in 9/11? And now there's war in Ukraine. And I also remember when Barack Obama was elected and we thought, our first black president. I never thought it would happen. We have turned the corner on racism. And then there was George Floyd. And unfortunately more. And now we're also seeing an increase in violence against the Asian population. And I think, when did this start? And the reality is, it's always been there, like other forms of racism. And it turns out, if you don't want to see injustice in the world, it's easy not to notice it. It may not be a conscious effort to avoid it. You might just not be exposed to it. Unfortunately, a lot of us, we are just distracted with life. So it takes a little bit of work to be aware of what's going on around us. So I believe Jesus would say, in a nice way, there's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done. Sometimes it starts by not trying to figure out people before you meet them. Judge not, right? Think on this. Love one another. Jesus did not make that up. He's simply preaching from Jewish law. It's in Leviticus. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love people from other countries. Treat them as your own. Who is your neighbor? Pretty much everybody. So this is not groundbreaking stuff 2,000 years ago when Jesus was preaching it again. Yet people had gotten away from God's commands. And the same is true for us today. We need reminders. So I go back to our first reading. If you remember, it was actually that first reading where Jesus says, "I will not be with you much longer. You cannot follow me. Love others as I have loved you." Notice he did not lean into his followers and this last set of instructions and say, "I want you to go out and teach everyone the 10 Commandments." He didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to go and give my ultimate sacrifice. Therefore, you need to obey me." He did not lay on the guilt trip. He says, "Love each other as I have loved you." There's a little twist from Leviticus. He's personalized it. He didn't say, "Love your neighbor as yourself." He says, "Love others as I have loved you." God personified through Jesus. He says, "We have traveled together. We have shared many meals together. We've laughed and cried together." Jesus has shown his compassion for others. He's healed people along the way, sharing friendship and making friends with people who were looked down upon. Love me as I have loved you. So how do we get there? Get to know someone before forming an opinion. Give people the benefit of the doubt. So when you see that person driving down the road, you think, wow, they're a crazy driver. Well, maybe they're on their way to the hospital. Or maybe they really just have to find a bathroom. And you have to remember, sometimes it takes a change in attitude. The other thing I would like to think is that we're all connected. This is not a new thought. You'll hear this from time to time from this church. We are all connected. So maybe that person, the flip side of that, maybe that person is just a bad driver. You've seen him holding a coffee in one hand and a phone like this. It's like, oh. So awareness, you got to be aware of your actions, because whether it's a big effect or a little effect, whether it's positive or negative, our day-to-day actions have effects on others. I don't believe there's any such thing as I'm not hurting anyone as a statement. So you need to think past yourself. So I think if I get COVID, I could pass it to my family. If I could pass it to my coworkers, I could take out an entire department of people working. So that's not hurting anyone. That's hurting potentially a lot of people. On a positive note, I know there are those out there that can strike up a conversation with total strangers. That's wonderful. That's a special talent, just meeting people and getting along with them. That makes me very uncomfortable, talking to strangers that I don't know, and just like in a restaurant or something, or a grocery store. If Dick and Shirley were here, you would hear that story quite a bit, and she is wonderful about that. So that's not my gig, but I will give you a friendly good morning when I'm walking by you in the hallway. Or, when we're on vacation and I'm walking towards the beach, I'll give everybody a hello. And I know this was happening because my daughter pointed it out to me, said, "Are you going to say hello to everybody on our way to the beach?" And I said, "Oh, it's a beautiful day. Why shouldn't I share this beautiful morning?" Confession. The opposite is also true. Our last trip to Disney, I was not my happy Disney self. And I violated my own rule. My rule is if you go to Disney, you're having a bad time, you're doing it wrong. And I was not happy with price increases, and I was not happy with this new app they had, and I wasn't using it right, and I was not happy. So I was having a negative effect on my family. And I don't know if they were getting upset with me. I think they were just more embarrassed to be around me. But still, it was a negative effect. And a lot of time was being spent trying to cheer me up. In my own defense, what was kind of going in my mind is, I'm here, I'm taking my family on vacation, I'm responsible for them having a good time, and I have let them down. So expectations, sometimes our own expectations will get in our way. We can be our own worst enemies. I should have taken the advice of my daughter-in-law. She says, "I'm at Disney, I'm just happy to be here." So positive attitudes, positive environments, and those are all good starts, and also awareness of your actions on others. And I heard this on the River radio station. Sometimes we get so focused on doing the things we shouldn't do, we lose focus on the things we should be doing. Again, it's going back to the 10 Commandments versus the first truly great command is love your neighbor. Good comes from the inside, from a generous heart, from a loving heart. Ask yourself, why do I do things? Do you do things because you have to, or because you like to? Did you come to church because you had to, or because you like to? I personally like coming to church. I feel I need to come to church. It's important for me to learn and grow, and I like to do it with other people. And I didn't get up here and volunteer to speak because I had to. It's because it's good for me. And even though I am nervous, I do like to do this. When I consider each week we are presented with multiple different options for scriptures, and I feel like my job is to put that puzzle together. How are these all linked together? Hopefully you've got a little bit of sense of that today. More importantly, all those sometimes disjointed scriptures, what do they tell us about God's love for us? Next slide, please. This is from Philippians 4. I find Paul to be a very interesting writer. Sometimes he's writing letters because he can't make that trip in person. And why he can't make that trip in person is because he's in jail and his life is threatened. Yet here he is, continuing the cause, putting others before himself. So finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about it. That your change in attitude, the change of your environment, positive things will lead to positive actions. Do them, and God of peace will be with you. So I'll leave you with that last thought of positive actions. Jesus did not say, obey me and don't do bad things. He said, care for the widow, the orphans, and the poor. Shed yourself of unimportant physical things, focus on your relationships, and share with those around you. learn to love others as I have loved you. Thank you.